Welcome everyone. We're just going to pause for a moment or so while everyone joins, just watching the attendee number sort of tick up. So give us a few moments and then we'll get started. Right, there's still a few people coming in, but it looks like the attendee number's slowed down. So we'll make a start. We've only got 30 minutes, so might as well get started. Welcome everyone to this CoffeeTime QI webinar from Life QI. Today it's all about progress tracking and reporting. So this is the latest in a series of webinars that we've been doing, kind of short, sharp learning sessions, kind of part theory, part practical, to do various aspects of kind of running and managing QI projects. Before we launch into the agenda today, just a couple of basic bits of housekeeping, kick off with some introductions. My name is Jason Williams, part of the Live QI team here, and I'm joined today by my colleague Sophie Harris, who you'll hear from a bit later. I'm going to lead the sort of more theory part of the session and then hand over to Sophie a bit later for the practical aspect. Between us, we're both going to be looking after kind of the chat and the Q&A. So if you haven't joined one of these Zoom webinars before, it's different to the meeting format. We can't see or hear you. If you want to interact, please use the chat or the Q&A. Ideally, post any questions into the Q&A. It's a bit easier for us to pick them up and triage them there. But if you can't find that, in the chat is fine as well. And feel free to kick things off just by saying hi in the chat, kind of which organization you're from, where in the world you are. It's always interesting to see where people are kind of tuning in from. It's good feedback for us as well. And then lastly, the webinar is being recorded. So if you need to leave early, that's fine. And you'll get an email in about 24 hours time with a link to the recording to watch back. And you're free to share that with colleagues as well. And in that email will include a link to the slides and some of the learning resources that we mentioned or have coming up a bit later as well. So I think that's it in terms of housekeeping. Just recap the agenda before we kind of dive into the session. So as I said, all about progress tracking and reporting of quality improvement projects. First half will be a bit more about the theory of that, why we should be doing it, that sort of thing. And then we'll do a bit of a demo on how to do kind of progress tracking and project reporting in Life QI. And if we've got time, we'll touch on some learning resources at the end, basically. So let's, without further ado, get stuck into the first topic of the day, which, let's be clear about what we're talking about. So we see these as two different things, kind of progress tracking and reporting. So just going to make clear kind of some of the differences before we talk about kind of the benefits and some best practices, really. At least our kind of interpretation of this, and there are some subtleties here, but when we talk about progress tracking, we're talking about kind of the elements on the left-hand side of this slide. So it really tends to be quite frequent communication of how the project is progressing or advancing. Primarily, it's often aimed at internal members of the project team. That information is being shared with them to keep them up to date with aspects of progress. And it might be classed as kind of real-time activity, or at least very frequent activity. Sometimes it's daily, if not weekly, kind of snippets of information to keep various aspects of the team up to date with how things are going. And if we look at the table at the bottom there, in terms of the detail level, it tends to be quite tasks level data. So people saying things like, you know, we've just finished adding in all the baseline data for the charts. Next week, we're going to start into the kind of the test phase, or we've just been planning a load of PDSA cycles and they've all been added into Live QI, for example. So we're going to start testing those next week. It's those kind of short snippets of information that are quite focused about specific bits of progress. It's not really summarizing the whole project and where it's got to. It's just giving small kind of progress kind of updates. Often kind of, as I say, kind of real time. It's done in sort of comments threads, or it's done in some kind of project tracker that you might have, depending on kind of the technology that you're using. So it's those sort of, more internally focused snippets of information. Whereas project reporting is a bit more on the kind of the formal side. It's a bit more structured normally. And often it's directed at kind of some of the more what we'd call like what I'll call external stakeholders, not necessarily external to your organization, but kind of external to the QI project team, basically. The operational leadership, the sponsors of the project, people like that who need to be kept up to date with how things are advancing. And often this is done at fairly agreed intervals, so monthly project reports, quarterly, whatever it might be, or it might be you have to report at certain milestones. It's those kind of more structured, more time-bound bits of kind of communication. In terms of the detail of those, we see quite a lot of variation here. Sometimes they're really quite detailed, kind of really surfacing almost every aspect of a project, sharing all of the control charts or run charts, sharing all the PDSA cycles. Oh, click through accidentally to the next slide there. Come back. Yeah, sharing a lot of detail about the project, kind of the mechanics of what's going on, as well as some of the sort of summary information explaining, so what does this mean? Where have we really got to? What are our next steps? It can be quite detailed in that sense. Other scenarios or other types of this project reporting we see are quite high level. The sort of project on a page or project summaries, highlight reports, things like that, which might share a little bit of the detail, maybe the outcome measure chart, something like that, but they don't really go into a lot of depth. They tend to be a bit more summarizing where you've got to, what the challenges are, what your plans are for kind of the next period. So you can see it's quite distinct from what we call the progress tracking. And the purpose of that is, yeah, we obviously mentioned communicating progress, but sometimes because of this sort of slightly more external stakeholder sets, about managing their expectations, keeping them aware and abreast of any risks, any issues, any action or help needed from them, things like that as well. So hopefully that sets the scene a little bit as to how we see the differences between those two activities. So if you now look at kind of the importance of both of them, there are some differences here. I mean, ultimately, they're both about keeping people informed and on the same page with how the project is going. So that's obviously important if you're trying to bring about change with your improvement project. Change involves people, it involves them changing behaviors and processes and things like that. So that's very much a team sport. People have to be in it together. So ultimately, that's kind of the importance and the benefit of it. You need to keep people on side. But if we dive into a bit more detail here, the different items we've got listed out here, the ones on the left about progress tracking, again, a bit more focused towards that internal project team, early detection of issues, better decision making. It's kind of keeping that internal team on point. We all understand where we're at, some of the issues and challenges. It's clear who's doing what, those sorts of things, providing us opportunities to kind of learn and keep us engaged with what's going on, so that no one's left out of the loop, anything like that, or a bit unsure about what's going on with the project. It's only going to work if all team members are kind of kept abreast of what's going on. Whereas on the reporting side of things, again, you're looking at that more of an external stakeholder set. So you might be more along the lines of that kind of building trust and credibility. If you've been entrusted to deliver some kind of change, some kind of improvement within the organization, then those stakeholders are going to have an interest in how well is that going? Is this team doing a good job? So kind of making sure that you're demonstrating that evidence of what's being achieved, kind of building up that trust that things are evolving and moving in the right direction, basically. And like we mentioned earlier, keeping them aligned on kind of the progress and the priorities, informing them of the decisions that have been made, the progress that's been made, the next steps and things like that. So they have an opportunity, not just to be informed, but perhaps to challenge or to provide some input into those things. In some cases, it's that forum for escalation. So maybe if things aren't going well or hit some kind of blocker, often it's those sort of the external stakeholders that are going to be needed to help address barriers, blockers, things like that, and through routes of escalation. Well, the time it's that project reporting that can provide them sight of the issue and some options around what to do about that. And in some cases, it is just an official record. Reporting and governance is an important part of any organization. So having an official record of how things are evolving at a particular time is a big part of how that reporting feeds into governance process. I'm not going to dwell in too much more detail there. I'm going to start to dive into some of the best practices that we see around these two different forms. Apologize for the amount of text on all of these slides. There's quite a lot of detail in here, and I'm not going to read all of this out. And again, we will share the slides afterwards, but wanted to highlight a range of different kind of bits of best practice. But what I'll do now is just sort of summarize them into some groups almost. A number of these are focused on really understanding or being clear about what it is what kind of information you're going to include when you are tracking progress. So if we look at sort of the deliverables and milestones, aspects of scope, time and cost, quantitative and qualitative data, things like the risks maybe on the right-hand side. A lot of that is being clear about what sort of information gets included when you are kind of tracking progress. What bits of information are you sharing with the team? What do they need to be kept up to date on or informed about? So a lot of it's about what. In number 3 here, using the right tools, is obviously more about how you're going to communicate that. We're obviously biased and think that Live QI is a great way of doing that, but the real fundamental here is being clear about how the channels that are going to be used to share that information, and making sure that the whole team is aware of how that information is going to be shared, because you can't keep them up to date if they don't know where to look for the information. So what's going to be communicated, how are you going to do it, and then all importantly, kind of when are you going to do it? So number 5 here, making it part of the routine. I think particularly for this kind of the progress tracking side of things, it's almost as frequent as possible. And that's going to be driven by what sort of information you decide to share. But ideally, you want to be keeping people in the loop with things as they evolve, so that it's not like they have to wait a month before they get a progress update. It's these short, sharp bits of information can help keep people better informed and better able to contribute to the success of the project. So yeah, summarize this as kind of being clear about what you're going to share, how you're going to share it, and how often you're going to share it, really. And it doesn't need to be too much more complicated than that. On the project reporting side of things, again, we've got a fairly long list of items that we could go into detail here, but a few bits that I'll kind of highlight as maybe the most important, at least in my experience. The first one, and it is number 1, tailoring reports to the audience. You might have a wide range of stakeholders who have some interest in the project who you need to report to. They're not all going to want the same sorts of information. Rarely does kind of one report meet all needs. And so you might have different types of report or different report templates. And that's certainly something you can have in Live QI that we use to address different stakeholders. It's kind of being aware of that. Not everyone's going to want the same sort of information. But they probably are going to want it consistently and predictably. So again, a bit like on the previous slide, this is a lot about timing. So if it is a monthly report, being clear that you do stick to that, because often that monthly report feeds into another chain of events or series of meetings, things like that. So if the report's not done when it's expected, that group of stakeholders can't discuss it, decide, they can't help contribute as needed if you're not meeting kind of the timeline side of things. What else I was going to highlight here? Probably it touches on a few points here, but the idea of kind of highlighting key messages, possibly first, but at least key messages, transparent about issues. A lot of the project report might be made up of the details of what's going on in the project, the PDSAs, the charts, things like that. But what is it that you really want people to know about the status of the project? So making sure you're highlighting, whether things are on track or if they're off track, that you're highlighting that, not hiding bad news, raising any issues or risks early so that people are aware of them even before they necessarily become a kind of a problem. Use those project reports as that opportunity to share that information and not to hide from it. And then those people are what they're going to really want to know then is the next steps and the actions, making clear that you have a plan for the next phase. At least that way it's helping kind of build that trust in the team that you know what you're doing, you know where you're going next, and they might challenge that or they might have other ideas. But if you don't present your version of the next steps and the actions, then they don't necessarily have anything to kind of challenge or contribute to. So I'd always make sure that's a key part of often the end of a project report. I think we're going to move, I'm going to pause for a second there. We're going to move on to sort of the more practical side of things in a moment. But before we do, just going to throw it over to Sophie to see whether we've had any questions on the theory side of things so far.
Yes, we have. One really good question, actually. Do you have kind of any advice on how you would break projects into kind of milestones? So how you'd break that project down into different milestones throughout the life cycle, basically?
Sure. I guess it can depend on the type of the project and the scale of the project, but if I look, I guess, a bit more generically at a quality improvement project, then the different phases that it'll go through. There's the kind of early sort of chartering planning type phase. Sometimes that can be quite quick, but it is an important phase. So there's probably that first almost milestone of there being a team, there being a charter, there being a decent plan, and kind of getting through that first phase. A lot of what comes next, and was probably the vast majority of the project, is more about testing changes, trying to implement changes, and depending on the level or the scope of the project, that might need to be broken down into subsections or substages, as it were. But yeah, typically the biggest part is more about kind of that testing out. And then once you get through that, depending on what you've found or proven, shown, there's then the kind of moving into more of an implementation sort of stage. So the changes that we have managed to affect, how we're going to make them business as usual, how are we planning for that, what needs to change in terms of the way the business operates, in terms of processes, all those sorts of things. That stage of the project can often be overlooked. I don't think it should just be seen as, well, we've run some PDSAs, they were successful, therefore we end it. Is actually allowing enough time at the end for that stage to make sure that, yeah, it's kind of gets signed off as business as usual. That would be broadly how I would kind of typically break up one of these projects. Does that sound about right, Sophie?
That's perfect. Thank you so much, Jason. Apart from that, we had a few questions around functionality, but I'm going to cover that in a second anyway. So that's great. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Well, yeah, as you just said, we're going to segue over now into a bit more of a practical demo. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second, and hopefully Sophie will fire up hers.
I will. Has that all come through okay?
Yeah, I can see that.
Perfect. Great. Well, hello, everybody. As Jason said, I am Sophie, and I'm just going to take over kind of the practical side of it. So I'm going to go over a few different elements in Life QI, mainly looking around how to record your project progress and then how to kind of run project reports and what they may look like in Life QI. So nice, easy things, won't take too long at all. But we're going to, first of all, kind of think about how to actually record the project progress and the different steps we might want to take within our project on Life QI to show where we are. Now, the first thing, and it speaks quite well actually to the milestones question that we had, and also around kind of the last point that Jason was making around the key messages and what to highlight within our project and where we are. And that's actually the project progress score of our project, which we can see here on our general page in the first kind of box of the glance bar, as I call it. So for those of you that aren't aware, the project progress score is based on the IHI progress score scale. It's a scale from 0.5 to 5.0 that increases in 0.5 increments. And it's essentially a way for you as the project team to say where you are within the life cycle of your project, kind of what's happening, do you need help, are you seeing improvement, etc., etc. So let's just have a look at those different scores. In order to change our score on the project, we click that change score option here, and you can see now I've got all of my different scores from 0.5 to 5.0 and what those mean. So at the beginning, we're looking at our kind of early milestones of we're doing our charter and our team are established. We're now coming into the point where we're testing changes. We might not be seeing improvement, but then coming up the scale here, we are starting to see improvement. Then at the end, we can see that where we all, the gold standard that we all want to get to, which is the kind of outstanding sustainable results. This is a really, really important part of your project, and it's a really good way for you to highlight quickly and easily where you are within the progress of your project. All you need to do is click the right one. It's got all of the information there, kind of what that means. Choose the right one, and then click change score. That then updates on the glance bar within our project here. But it's important to note that not only does this kind of update here, it also then updates on any dashboards that we might have as part of the organisation. So anyone that's monitoring our projects will be able to see that progress score as and when it changes. Now, it is probably important for me to know, because I get this question quite a lot, that actually this is down to you as the project team in order to update. It isn't an automatic updating. Just because we're adding data or running PDSAs doesn't mean that that progress score is going to change. It's down for me to have a conversation with my project team. Where do we think we are? Great, we think we're seeing improvement. Let's update our progress score. So just something to think about every time you come in to work on your project. Another thing, and just on that, I don't. I've just seen a reply from the question. I don't necessarily think Jason meant that the progress scores in themselves for the milestones, but for me, it's just a good way to complement them. So it's another way for you to shout about where you are and what might be happening within the project. So another element that we have in order to record our project progress is the timeline. So this is helpful visual to see one, what has happened within our project. So that's on the right-hand side of the page, this little timeline button here. It gives us a nice kind of detail of everything that's happened on the project, when progress scores have been changed, when measures have been added, when PDSAs have been run. So you can scroll through this nice and easily to see when things have been added. You can also view it in a calendar view if you want to, so you can kind of scroll along and see what's happened throughout the whole project. The one thing that I use quite a lot, and a lot of other organizations use as well, which is quite a good way to track the project progress, is adding status updates to your timeline. So to do that, you're going to click on this add a timeline button at the top. On this drop down, you're going to choose status update. And then coming along here, you can then add in your status update. Now, I'm not going to be very imaginative, and I'm just going to put this is my status update. But this could be saying what you've achieved in the last month. It could be saying, it might be a brief summary of a team meeting that you've held. Whatever might be helpful to show progress on that project, you can add to the status, the timeline as a status update. You can put the date of when that happened, and then you can create the event, and that then adds to your timeline. So this is super helpful for people within your project to see what's happened, but also, again, this is a reportable field. So this can be pulled through to kind of trust level analytics dashboards. It can also be pulled off on individual project level reports that we're going to have a look at. So just another super helpful way for you to kind of record that project progress as you go through. Um, Another thing which is super, super obvious, but it's also just keeping your project up to date. So running your PDSAs, adding in your data. So coming in and making sure that, you are adding your data on a regular basis, that you are coming in and adding that every month or every week or however often you need to add in that data. Make sure that you are tracking your PDSAs in LifeQI so you can then see where they are, how many cycles we've got, because all of this can be reported on and all of it can be seen by other people that are on your project in LifeQI. So super obvious one, but one that sometimes people don't do. So it's just worth me mentioning that there as well. So the other thing that Jason spoke about was the project reports. So we have lots of different report options in LifeQI. We have individual project reports, which we're going to show now. We have project list reports, and we also have dashboards. Now, if you do want more information on the other types of reports, we have help articles and we also have some webinars specifically around reporting. But today we are really just going to look at the project level report. So when you're in your project, it might be that your organization requires you to do it every month, or it might be that you want to start doing it every month or every quarter. What we can do from our project is through this actions button here, we can click reports, and we're then going to see a list of reports that are available to us. So everyone will have a few standard ones that are available to everybody using LifeQI. For example, the overview project report, as well as the detailed project report. But some of you may see a more extensive list because it might be that your organization has a lot of project reports available that are bespoke to you and the way that your organization reports. Or some of you might just have a few. So it's not going to look the same for everyone, but you will all have access to a minimum of the overview project report and the detailed project report. Now, with the reports, we do have the ability to create your own bespoke reports in LifeQI. So if your organization has a specific status update report that they want run every month, we can work with you to set that up and make that available to your users in LifeQI. So just something to bear in mind. For this example, we're just going to have a look at the overview report. Just nice and easy, quick one to look at. So we've come into actions, we've come into reports, we're then going to click on the report that we want to run. That's then going to generate this report here for us. So on the top, we have the title. I always enter the date on the title. I'll show you why in a minute, but I find then it's just super easy to see which report is which and when I ran it. The reports then have the ability to pull off information from your project. As this is the overview report, we're not doing absolutely everything. We're just doing, as it says, an overview of the project. So the general information, my aim, rationale, start date, any priorities that it might be linked to, my driver diagram here as well. And then I'm pulling out my measures. So what outcome measures do I have in a nice image of my chart so we can see how I'm doing with my data. Then a brief little summary at the end where I can add in my status update. Again, imagination's not great today, I apologize. And then I'm going to do more work. Okay, so we can then add in the plan for the next period and the status update. So again, whoever you're sending this to is then going to see that you do see what's happening within your project, what might have gone wrong, your milestones, your learnings, etc. And then what are you going to do to take this project forward? Okay. Once we've filled out the detail that we need of our report, we simply click Create Report. That then creates the report like this in LifeQI for us, okay? So we can now see that we have the report. If we need to make any changes, we can click Edit, and then we can make any changes to kind of the free text elements down here. But then if we want to share this with people, we can either send them a link. If they are a member of LifeQI, you can send them a link directly to the report. You can click the Actions button and you can PDF it here, and you can send that as an attachment in an email. Or what we can do is coming back to my project here, all of my reports are automatically going to be saved within the document area. So let me just do that again. Right-hand side, document area here, then all of the reports that I run on my project will automatically save within this area here. And you'll see this is why I add in the date to my titles, just because then I can quickly and easily see which report relates to which period of time. But everyone that you run will end in here. Okay, so super quick, simple things that we can do to kind of track that project progress as well as run those project reports. If you do want any more kind of information on the project reporting, we do have on our help center, we have the whole section on reporting and analytics. So you can come in here and you can understand kind of the different reports, different analytics. We also have lots and lots of help articles in here that might be useful. But that's what I was going to show today. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just check in and see if we've got any questions. Jason, has anything come in while I've been chatting away?
Just had one come in just now. Someone just saying, I missed how you asked the report to include the data and that flowchart. I guess that's referencing how did the report template, how is it structured like that, as it were?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, 100%, and good question. So the one that I showed you is a generic template that we have in LifeQI that we've come up with the template for. So we've set up a template that we've asked it to pull this level of information from the project. And with the detailed one that I discussed as well, that again is a generic one that we have created that pulls out more information. But we do work with organizations where they might want to have specific elements pulled out into their project. So they might not want the driver diagram, but they might want the measure information. Or it might be that they just want to highlight report where it's all questions. So you can work with your with your success manager to create those bespoke report templates if there are certain elements that you want to add. But if you want to just run our generic ones, it's through the actions report button, and then you'll have the generic ones available to you there.
Great, thank you. We've just had another question come in, which I'm typing the answer to, but I'll read it out as well.
Perfect.
Which was, great webinar, thank you. Does LifeQI have the ability to import data? So I'm just answering that in
Great.
the Q&A, but basically saying there's sort of two answers to that, depending on where you're thinking about. When it comes to the charts, you can't import the data as such, but you can copy paste the data in. So you can't upload a file to populate the charts, but you can copy paste the data into the spreadsheet attached to the chart, and it will populate the chart for you. But you've also got the ability to upload files. So if it's not chart data, but it is a file that you want to attach to the project, then there is a dedicated file store on the right hand side of the project under the timeline, so you can import any data that you need into there.
Perfect. I have actually just added the adding data to a chart help article into the chat, which goes over how to paste data into your chart, if that would be useful as well. Just because I don't think we've got time to show it live.
Great, thank you. Yes, I think we are at time. We've had our 30 minutes. If there are any last minute questions, fire them in now. But otherwise, we'll draw this to a close. As I said, you'll get an email in about 24 hours time with a link to the recording. We should better include a link to the slides, and those slides, there's a slide that we didn't get to, which is a list of learning resources. So we'll make sure that that's included as well. So you've got some follow-up reading to be done. I hope everyone's enjoyed that. Thank you for tuning in. And look out for future webinars on lifeqisystem.com/webinars, and we look forward to seeing you all again soon.
So, bye.